Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Content Narrative. We will be looking at The Witch's Boy by Michael Gruber. Now, I have had this book in my library for, I'm so close to being considered a library. Forever, for ages, I can't remember where I got it, I can't remember where I picked it up, but it is a good comfort book for me, and I love reading it. So it follows a witch and Lump. Now, Lump, believe it or not, that is what he's called, is an ugly boy. Now, he is left as a baby to a witch. I believe it is as a sacrifice, but the witch decides to take him in and raise him. Now, by raising him, he has a bear as a nanny, he has a genie as a servant, and he only has a cat to be able to talk to. So he doesn't really have any kind of inter-children relationships. He doesn't make friends with other children, and as he grows up he learns the skills of witchcraft and everything, even though it's harder for him because he's a boy, whereas witchcraft apparently comes quite natural to women. Don't comment. And it's not an ugly duckling story. So it's not a story of Lump starts off as an ugly child and then as he grows older he becomes beautiful and everyone accepts him. It's not that in the slightest. It follows him growing up, and it follows him trying to become accepted and loved for who he is. But there is points in the book where you genuinely hate him as a person. And although you can see why he is the way he is, you still think he's selfish and nasty. But you can kind of understand where he gets that way. But there are points when you go, oh my God, honestly, what a detestable character. And I love that. I genuinely love it, because you sit there and go, okay, well, he's a detestable character, but he was raised by a witch, a bear, a genie, and a talking cat. He was abandoned as a child because he's ugly, unbearably ugly. Do you know what I mean? He can't learn the witch's powers completely because he is not a witch. And it's such a good book, because it follows, it's got magic, it's got, stories of love, but not necessarily the kind of hot and dirty kind of steamy love that some adults books get, which sometimes I just don't want that. But it's got sort of the love, and it follows, and it sounds really cheesy being he's got to learn to accept himself and stuff, but it does have good sort of points to it, and I think it stands the test of time. And I honestly, it breaks your heart at points, but then as you're reading it then continues and it mends your heart. And I honestly, I sometimes forget I have this book, because I'm constantly buying new ones, and as you can see in my bookcase, it's a double one, so there's books behind the books. So sometimes I genuinely forget about the books behind the ones at the front. And it was only recently that I sort of got a few new books, and this one came to the front again, and I was like, oh, why don't we give that one another reread? And I loved it today. I loved it as much today as I loved it back when I started reading it. And I would urge anybody to give it a go, because honestly, it gets a 4 out of 5 from me. It would get a 5 out of 5, but as I said, at points he is truly detestable. And I know that is what obviously Michael Gruber is trying to get across. When you live a charmed life basically, and then you realise that you're a human and they don't like you for who you are. But there are points when he's a really horrible person, and you're like, So for that, it's getting a 4 out of 5. But please give it a read. Let me know if you read it and you enjoy it. Let me know if you enjoy any of the book recommendations that I do. Thank you for your continued support. Remember to click subscribe so you're alerted whenever a new video does come out. And thank you very much. So remember to always keep it contento.